title of the talk tonight was what are we doing besides for teaching? What are we learning from our students? And why is it that so many of our korbanos are pointing fingers at the system? Now the point is not, chas v'shalom, to take anyone on a guilt trip. Nobody is guilty, or let's hope or assume that no one's guilty. And even if you had a talmid or talmidah that didn't make it through the system, it doesn't mean it was your fault. We'll learn that there might have been things you could have done to identify the problem and possibly avoid the final break. But we definitely have to be careful not to be a contributing factor to making this formerly healthy child become more fragile, and obviously when he gets too fragile and gets a little knock, and then he smashes to pieces. A smashed up child is what we often call off the derech, and there's lots of levels of off the derech, and very often they're off the derech and they still look completely put together. Rarely these kids actually put it through faking it and then getting mature enough and realizing I don't need to go off the derech, but often at some point it just breaks. So we have to make sure, number one, that we're not helping him become more fragile or break, and hopefully if we can identify his fragility, we'll be able to to strengthen him, and hopefully if nobody else breaks him later on, he'll be able to stay healthy. So the first thing every teacher has to ask themselves is, what is my job? So if your job is to bring home parnasa because your husband or future husband is supposed to be sitting and learning, then you're in the wrong job. Because anyone who's in a business, you're just in the wrong business. It's the worst, it's the job with the most responsibility and the least pay. So if you want to make money, become a sheitel machel or do anything else, don't be a teacher. You're allowed to get paid. You're allowed to get paid, but we're on a mission. A mission means we have a goal, we have a mission statement, and we have to make sure to keep that goal in focus all the time. So what is our goal as a teacher? We have to remember that in a business, there's business hours. It's 9 to 5 or any other type of limited time. But if you're on a mission, then your mission doesn't change, doesn't stop. And even though the school closes, your mission continues. So what is our mission statement? So the truth is, the whole concept of noshim, of ladies being teachers, is a relatively new concept. I don't think back in the days girls were learning that much, and women were certainly not teachers for the boys. But today that's what it is. So what is our job as a teacher? Initially, when the concept of teachers was first invented, which was sometime in the time of the Gemara, our job as teachers was to teach. To teach means one thing only. You have a whole bunch of information, a curriculum, a syllabus. Just make sure that your students get the information, stick it through the tests and pass. That's what a teacher, that's what you're doing when you're teaching information. And that's not really a mission, that could be a job. Just like ram the information down his throat to make sure he remembers it long enough to pass the test. If after the test he forgets, then that's just that. Unfortunately today, and this is post-Holocaust, teachers have been given an added job called to be mechanchis, which is a completely different job. It's a different job, it's a different mission, and it's got nothing to do with the information you give them, it has nothing to do with the test they passed, it has to do with being mechanech. What does it mean to be mechanech? So the word chinuch, I'm not going to bore you with sources. For those who want, there's a kuntrus which I wrote, but it's been written in Lashon HaKodesh, and it's not probably not for most of you. But what is chinuch? Chinuch means one thing. It means helping the child be able to, in the future, bring his koiches, his potential into being. To bring out his potential. It's not about doing things now. Now he's a child, often a young adult. This is not where his potential is going to come out. Your job as a mechanech, and this is true also as a mother, all of you or most of you are mothers, and it's the same thing. You have a job of being a parent, but besides being a parent, you also have a job of being a mechaneches. Mechaneches is not about getting the child to do things. That's called taming a child. It's what you do when you want to tame a parrot to walk across a string. Then you get him to just do things again and again until he does it naturally. That's not chinuch. It doesn't normally last. The pasuk says that you know it's chinuch if gam ki yazkin lo yosor. It's something that's permanent. He's got a message and it's going to take him right to the end. Even when he's old, he's still mechunech. So what's interesting is that the potential of a child will come out whether we like it or not. Every person naturally, and this is true in animal life, it's true in plant life, potential is naturally yoytza mikoyach el hapoel. It's going to get expressed. What we have to do as chinuch is to create the environment where the child can get nurtured and can blossom on his own. If we just get out of the way and give him an environment which is healthy and nurtured, he will fulfill his potential and he will become the person he's been destined to become. What does it take to make a child that's learnable material? That's able to take in information, be able to take in the messages, and be able to become the person he's supposed to become. So the Gemara says in Tainus that if you see a student that's not managing to progress with the limudim or whatever he's supposed to be learning, then what's actually happened is that there's something between the connection between the teacher and the child that's not right. Savor upon him yofis, the smile wasn't bright enough, it wasn't natural enough, it wasn't true enough. So I've mentioned in a number of other opportunities last week that every single child, every single human being, in order to survive, has to feel alive. And the only thing that makes a person feel alive is when he has two basic needs that are met. One is called love, and the other one is called respect. What's the difference between love and respect? What is love? What is respect? In the world today, they think that love is something you fall into. But in the Torah that we know, you don't fall into anything positive. You grow into something. You grow. So love is connection. It's becoming, it's unity. Unity is love. That's why Ava is the gematria of Echot. The other side of the coin is Kavod, which is individuality. So Ava is where we are one, and Kavod is where we are different, where we are not one. Kavod is respect. You don't respect an equal. You respect a teacher, you respect a father, you respect a king. Somebody who's above you there's halacha that you have to respect them. But we know that you have to respect everybody. So the Sfarim write that you have to find something in everyone that somebody is your Rebbe, is your teacher in some fine detail. There's something that this person is doing that makes him unique, that even I have what to learn from him. The Ramban says that even if you see the lowest, in the Yigeres Ramban, I think, even the lowest person, there's something you can learn from him. He might have bigger challenges than us. His ability to withstand challenges and pick himself up after he falls might be something way beyond us. just because we don't fall as far as him doesn't mean that he's not doing a greater and harder work. So a child that feels that they are worthy of being loved, and not only worthy of being loved, they are actually, the feelings of appreciation and love between the teacher and the child is the way it's supposed to be. That child will be nurtured enough to be able to grow and will actually be able to listen to what the teacher has to say. There's an expression that who you are screams much louder than what you say. Children don't take in what teachers say, they take in what teachers are. So if every single child in the classroom feels, wow, I am everything to this teacher, that child will feel happy to come to school. If coming to school just means at the most that his mother's happy that he's not at home, and then he comes to school and at the best he's not noticed, and at the worst he is noticed, then he's not going to be very nurtured to be able to take in any information, to be able to grow and become the person he's supposed to become. And the same is true regarding respect. If the teacher doesn't look up to a child, if every single student is not unique in it's something unique, that child will feel disrespected. And somebody who came to me today, whose child left the school. He was a good child, he sat at the back of the classroom every single day, didn't cause any damage. Why don't you want to go to school? He says, I was in the school a whole year in this class, the Rebbe doesn't even know my name. Now, you could ask, why do you have to know his name? Like his older brother was doing amazing. Every time the kids came in, the whole school knew about it, everybody knew his name, everybody knew where he was and what he was doing. He had no problem. He was like sticking out. This other kid who was like not trying to make a noise, but he just needed to be noticed. And the fact that his Rebbe didn't even know his name, it broke him completely. There's a story with Rav Shach that a Rebbe came and wanted to throw a child out of the classroom. Rav Shach asked him, do you know the name of the mother of the child? No, I teach boys, I don't teach mothers. He says, what do you mean? You don't daven for this child? You can see he's having a hard time. You don't know his mother's name? How can you throw him out? He threw the Rebbe out. So we're not asking that you should know the name of the mother of every child, but does every child know that you know his name? When he comes in, does he feel that you're okay, you're happy that he's here, that he's making a difference to you? When the child comes 10 minutes late, and you say, Shlomi, Chani, whatever his or her name is, I'm so happy that you're here, we were missing you, there's a good chance that the next day he's going to come back, he's going to come on time. Wow, they missed me, they want me here, I'll come on time. But if you tell him, why did you come late, you missed the first 10 minutes of the lesson, go back home now and get a late note. And then he's going back home and probably going to get, his mother's probably going to say, not you again, I just sent you to school. You're coming back home, that's going to make him feel great. And then he's going to get this late note and come back to the lesson, and the Rebbe's going to frown at him and send him to his place. What's that going to do? The Sfarim teach us that when it comes to teaching Limudei Kodesh, which I'm sure some of you are teaching, it's not, even what we're trying to teach, it's not just information. We're trying to form the emotional and spiritual connection between the Talmid or the Talmidah and Torah. And the Sfarim writes, the Vilna Gaon writes, that if there was some lack of emotional connection between the Rebbe, the teacher, and the student, that student is going to grow into a dislike, into hatred for Torah. We sometimes find there are boys, there are girls who they hate anything to do with Yiddishkeit. And we try and find that, did anyone hurt them? What's going on here? And often we find there was one teacher that just it didn't work out with this child. So this child spent a whole year taking in those vibes of, I don't need you, I don't want you, I don't care about you. And even if nothing was said, just being in a classroom like that, taking in information which is supposed to form our minds, and taking those messages of disconnected, it'll just disconnect them from Yiddishkeit completely. It's very, very complicated to repair that afterwards. So we have to remember that. There's every person, we discussed this, otherwise he's got his emotional world and he's got his cognitive world, the brain, and the cognitive world will only grow and can only thrive if the emotional world is healthy. If the emotional world is broken, then the brain cannot function. We said that the emotional world is made of love and respect. If you give every single child love and respect, then he will be nurtured enough, his brain will be able to take in the information, he'll be able to be also a teacher, and that is chinuch. I'm often asked by teachers, it could be none of you have seen such a phenomenon, but sometimes the students, they're cheeky. It's called chutzpah. I don't know if it ever happens to you. Chutzpah. What's the chutzpah? This child asked a question, didn't put up his hand, didn't wait to be asked to speak, he just blurted out the question or the answer in front of everybody, and it's nothing short of chutzpah and has to be dealt with accordingly, because if you're chutzpahdik, then you can't be a mother, and you can't be a wife, and you can't be anything, you can't even be a good Jew. So you just have to really make sure they understand you cannot be chutzpahdik, and whatever it takes. And obviously everybody else has to know you can't be chutzpahdik, so even if I can teach it to you like on a one-to-one, but I do have to teach you in front of everybody else, so everybody should know you can't be chutzpahdik. So number one, no child is born chutzpahdik. And very often the child just has that need to know the answer. It's like a very basic need of bikush emes. There are some kids that, and it's a very Jewish trait, it's called certainty. Certainty is called vados. The Sforim or the Mukubalim ask, what shame? In order to be able to go up to Shemayim, you need to say some things that the Mukubalim know how to say, and then they just fly up to Shemayim. What did Moshe Rabbeinu say to get the Torah? So he said one word, said something to do with the word vadai, certainty, because that's what Torah is. We know that the opposite of certainty is doubt, and doubt is the gematria of Amalek. He's the one that makes us all not sure what we're doing, what we're not doing, what we're supposed to do, confuses us with doubts. So there are some kids that need this more than others. They need their certainty. Very yekish, they need to know exactly where we're going, every pencil, every pen, where it is, that they have everything they need. They have to know 2 days before where their books are in the right piles. Those are the kids who need their certainty. A kid that needs its certainty and doesn't get it is switched off. I didn't understand anything in school today. What do you didn't understand? You don't understand Yiddish, you don't understand English? What didn't you understand? I didn't understand anything. And it turns out, this word you didn't understand? No, I know what this word means. This word, I know what this means. There was one little thing you didn't understand, but for these kids, if there's something they don't understand, in their minds, it's like, okay, so I just don't understand what's going on. And then they switch off. These kids, these certainty kids, they're the ones who are going to blurt out, but what does this mean? Is it chutzpah? No, it's not chutzpah. It's just their brains cannot function if it's something they don't understand. And while you're talking and you've already gone on to the next sentence and he desperately wants to follow you, and you just said that word that you didn't understand, and he, till he puts up his hand, and obviously you can't answer him because, there's discipline, you ask questions when I'm ready to ask questions, and, so he just blurted out, well, what does this mean? And that's chutzpah. And then instead of us learning that this is a child that needs certainty, for heaven's sake, just answer his question and move on, we have to now make this into a fully blown chutzpah scene and take it totally out of proportion. And then what we're actually telling the child is, if you really need to understand something and don't understand it, that's chutzpahdik. And the child says, okay, I get it. And that's it. And he doesn't put up his hand anymore, and he doesn't shout out, and he's very, very obedient, and he doesn't understand anything. And 2 years down the line, we wonder why he's getting 0 in his tests. Well, he was listening to what his teacher said. The teacher told me that if I need to understand something, and I just can't understand it if I don't know what all the words mean, then I'm chutzpahdik. I don't want to be chutzpahdik, and that's the end of it. So we often confuse a need to know the answer to chutzpah, and it happens all the time. But these certainty kids, I don't know if I said this over, but we had this kid that needed to know all the words at the beginning of the lesson. It's sometimes so easy to meet the needs of these children. Instead of writing the hard words on the board at the end of the lesson, write them at the beginning of the lesson. What does it cost you? Now, at the end of the lesson, we write the words. Through the lesson, we don't want them to get confused. They have to I'll tell them what I need to tell them. At the end of the lesson, they write down the words, they write it in their books, and they sleep on it, and then it goes in. Tachlis, these kids, they went through a whole lesson, didn't understand the word. And then at the end, you write down the words. Thank you very much. I know now the words, but I didn't understand the lesson. Write down the words at the beginning of the lesson, and they'll be able to focus. This kid that shouts out answers in front of all his friends, is it chutzpah? No, he needs to be seen. So yes, should he do it? No, he shouldn't do it. But we have to. What the children are teaching us is, what do I need? This child that's shouting out, he needs to be seen. Have you seen him? So these Rebbes asked me a while back, how do we deal with this phenomenon called chutzpah? So I told them it's very easy. The Gemara says that if somebody feels indebted to you, they will not be able to be chutzpahdik to you. It's a Gemara. Ein odam meiz panov b'fnei ba'al choivoi. If somebody feels they owe you a favor, they're going to talk to you nicely. Even in halacha we have that. You all know when you borrow money from somebody, you're not allowed to give back more. So when you repay a loan, give back the money. Are you allowed to shower the person who lent you the money with loads and loads of brachas? You're not allowed to. Just say nicely thank you. Some don't even say thank you because they're worried that it's called ribis, but most people realize they're allowed to say thank you, but not more. Don't give a whole drasha of brachas because you're giving back more than you borrowed, and that's called ribis. It's not the most serious level of ribis, but it's a level of ribis which is awesome. So you see that just saying a word, just saying something nice, saying something which is making you feel, wow, this Rebbe really believes in me, this Rebbe's given me something. It's 2 words, it's 3 words, and the person feels indebted. There's halacha to be a dayan. If you have a dispute with your neighbor and you come to Beis Din, you're not allowed to be a relative or have any connection with any of the dayanim, because we're afraid that he's going to favor you. It's a pasuk. What happens if I just gave this Rebbe, this dayan, a lift to shul or wherever it is early on or whenever? He's not allowed to be a dayan. What did you do? I bribed him. I gave him money in order to judge me favorably. I didn't nothing. I just gave him a ride. I didn't even know then that he was ever going to be my dayan, because I didn't know I'd ever fight with my neighbor. But the halacha is he's not allowed to be your dayan. So sometimes it's so easy to just do something to make that child feel, wow, I owe it to my teacher. I'm feeling I'm coming away with more than I came with. Just a nice word. Give them a jelly, a toffee in the morning. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy you came. Here you go. Or I'm happy you came on time. You've bought the kid. That kid's going to be chutzpahdik to you afterwards? No chance. You ever had a boy or girl that you had a good relationship with that was chutzpahdik in the lesson? It never ever happens. So instead of making a whole scene of chutzpah, just buy the kid. It only costs a few pennies. So for us teachers, it's very important to realize that every single human being, and especially those children between the age of 0 and 13, before they have the brains to regulate how they respond to emotional challenges, is every single person is somewhere between 0 and 100 on being loved, feeling loved or feeling rejected, feeling significant or feeling failure. And all of us are somewhere in that spectrum as well. But most of us have enough brains that even when we get triggered and our spouses, our friends, our neighbors say something that would reject us or bring out our failure, we can stay composed. It's min hashamayim. We can discuss it. We all have our own tools how to deal with it, but we can deal with it. A little child cannot deal with it, and he's somewhere in the spectrum between 0 and 100 of rejection or failure. Now, the further he is towards failure or rejection, the further he is from survival. The Gemara says that if you rob somebody on an absolute way of love and respect, he's going to drop dead. It's a Gemara. The Gemara says a person cannot survive unless he has some level of love in his life and some level of respect. And nowadays you have kids from broken homes and kids from that got hurt by other people. And every teacher knows knows a bit of what's going on. So if this kid is like, this Israeli thick-skinned kid who comes in feeling top of the world, then we sometimes feel a bit insignificant and rejected, and that's our problem. But he's okay for himself. But these very docile, soft-spoken kids, and most of them are very, very sensitive, and they've had enough experiences through life that they're not feeling exactly so loved or respected, and they're heading towards rejection, failure, and especially when I had one kid that I was dealing with in Eretz Yisrael who just totally snapped. And he had a private Rebbe. So I asked him, I said, you did a good job. Can you tell me what you did? And his kid just dropped everything. He says, I used to learn with him. And every time I wanted him to become a real Talmud Chacham, and every time he did something wrong, I pointed it out to him. Because I wanted him really to know how to become a Talmud Chacham. He's not doing anything wrong today. He's not doing anything. He's just dropped everything. You wouldn't even notice he's a Yid. So is that the whole story? No. He was a little bit fragile before. He was somewhere between closer to 100 than to 0. And then he gets this well-meaning Avrech that's really showing him all the things he's doing wrong, and that's it. Became fragile and more fragile, and then he just broke. So as teachers, we have to know, number one, every single child is somewhere between 0 and 100. Do you know where he's holding? Because if he's holding at 98 towards rejection, then you're going to say one little thing, and that's it. And then he's going to blame you, because that was the final trauma for him. You're going to say, I don't understand. I didn't treat him different to anyone else. I didn't do anything wrong. And that's the truth. But who does that help? So before we do anything that could potentially overthrow a fragile kid, you have to know where that kid is up to. And the truth is, there's never ever a good reason to reject or to bring out the failures of any child. I once got a call on Yom Tov. 3 times somebody calls, I'll answer the phone. Pikuach Nefesh, I know who I'm dealing with. And this Bacher calls me up on Yom Tov. Could be now to Charlotte, it was already not Yom Tov anymore, in Chutz La'aretz it was still Yom Tov, he was calling from there. He was about to jump off the roof, and he meant it very, very seriously. What was the problem? He said, just before Yom Tov, we got our report cards. So what did you get? As a bright kid. He says, I got 70s, 60s, and 80. But it's double what I ever got. So what's the problem? Like, you calling me in Yom Tov to give me the good news? So he says, no, I'm about to commit suicide. Why? He says, if that's what I get, it's not worth, there's nothing in this for me. So I said, what's the problem? He says, I put so much effort, I gave everything, and I only got an 80, I only got 70. So why he's judging 70 as being failure, that's also a problem. But this kid, he's judging life with failure versus success, wherever it might be, in a very black and white way. So I told him, take a Tipex, is that what they call it here, the white now? Take Tipex and rub out the 70 on Yom Tov. Rub it out, okay. How much effort did you put in? 100. Okay, right, 100. We went through his whole report card, and each thing I asked him, how much do you get for effort? And I told him to write it in. I said, now ask your parent, when you get home tonight, tell your parents to sign it and send it back to school. You have to send it there halfway, you have to send it back, the report cards back to the school. So write it all out, put hundreds in and send it back. And if they have a problem with it, tell them Rabbi Lobenstein said we should do that. And he was okay. Afterwards he was okay. Now, I don't know why teachers or schools have a kick out of telling the student that they didn't get 100. Like, is that going to make a difference to the shidduch or something? Who really cares? So it's important for the teachers to know. You have to know where the child is holding, because you have to know where he needs extra help, where he's falling short. But does the child really have to know where he's failing? Is it like, did you ever find the student who says, oh, I only got 80, I must have done something wrong, maybe I did some Averis, maybe I didn't learn hard enough, I'm going to do tshuva, I'm going to get 100 next time? I don't know if they don't make them like that today. They're just going to break them. And noch that evening with that Bacher, I got a call from his parents He says, terrible, my child's going off the derech. 10 times he tried to call me on Yom Tov. Yeah, I said, you're lucky that I answered the phone, because otherwise you'd be calling me up to Levaya. So that's an extreme case, and I'm not saying that you're not allowed to tell a child you've got 70. We mustn't get paranoid. We have to realize everything we're doing. That report card, I still remember till today. I was used to getting like somewhere between 30 and 50 for results. That's just who I was at the time, and that was fine. What? You say 50 is not bad, yeah. And I remember till today that there was one teacher that wrote on the card. Till today I don't remember anything I learned in that school. The whole school, I don't remember anything I learned, if I learned anything. One thing I remember is getting that report card. It said there that this term, we saw that you made a marked effort in behavior probably, or whatever it was, but no room for complacency. Now, complacency was a word which was much too long for me at the time. I had no idea what it meant. So I asked somebody, what does complacency mean? He says, like, don't feel so good about yourself. It's like, okay, you tried hard, but like, don't feel good about yourself. Just keep doing it. Till today, I remember that. I felt so good at the first half. Why did you have to add those 3 words? All it did was, it switched me off completely. What were you trying to gain? To like, teach me and make me aware that next, what was your goal? What was your mission statement before filling in that report card? You want to tell my parents that you think that I shouldn't become a Balgaiva because I spent 1 term trying a bit harder. So call my parents, they should teach me how to be humble. But what are you trying to do? So the types of punishments we give have to be very much in tune with what the child is doing. If you feel it's important to punish a child, you call it consequences or any other fancy philosophy that you believe works, that's okay. But you're clearly not trying to traumatize the kid. So if you have this kid, we'll call this Yeka, and he's done something wrong, he didn't come into the class quick enough, or he didn't leave the classroom fast enough at break time. Now it's very, very important because we cannot have the children in class. Can't explain to you why. It's something we were yarshim from door after door. In the break times you can't be in the classroom, and there's obviously some hidden reason for it. Fine, okay. And this kid was in the classroom. This actually happened to me, by the way, when I don't remember, about 12. His teacher stalks in and says, write down 1,000,000 times on a piece of paper, I must not be in the classroom during break time. I got that 1,000,000 lines. It was murdic. Don't worry, I punished the teacher. I didn't argue with him. I started doing them till he went out of his mind. But so a yekish child, somebody who needs to know everything, right? And you give him lines, is that what they call it, lines to write? Then it's extremely uneducational, and it teaches the child how uneducated the teacher is. But he might do them, and he'll survive. He won't get traumatized because it's very, very defined. He has to write 1,000,000 times some holy thing. And if we're educated and you want it to really have an effect, and you really want to burn the child out, then you don't give them stupid lines to write. You tell them, write out Igeres Haramban, because we really want him to understand that Igeres Haramban is actually not a letter of the Ramban, it's just a punishment. So when we want to punish you, write Igeres Haramban, and then he knows that when I need a punishment, Igeres Haramban is a punishment, and that's very educational. But at least he's not going to get traumatized. You're just going to give him the wrong messages, or like Tehillim, Kuf Yotes, or something like that. Just that he knows that Tehillim is a form of punishment. Or, if you misbehaved in school, you have to stay in school detention, they used to call it. That's when I learned that school was a punishment. I thought the school was coming to learn until they used it as a punishment. You deserve a punishment, stay in school. And then, okay, so now I know school's a punishment. Those are the things that you teachers are teaching us children. Is that what you want to be teaching us? But if you take this certainty kid and you say, you misbehaved, obviously some very serious thing, wait outside the classroom. So this kid is going to say, for how long? Because he needs to know. And so if you're sensible, you'll say to him, for 5 minutes, or till the end of the lesson. But if you're like really aggressive and just don't understand the kid, you'll say, I'll call you in when I'm ready. I'm sure none of us have ever done that. But wait outside, I'll call you in when I'm ready for you. So in this kid who needs the certainty, then you haven't shown him consequences, you just traumatized him. Because he needs to know what he's doing. Tell him he has to go for a 10-kilometer walk and walk back. Make it clear. If you give him a punishment that's unclear, indefinite, uncertain, you haven't shown him consequences, you've traumatized him. And the same will be with if you've got this kid who he needs friends for him, we have these kids that are terrible. They're the ones that go off the derech, because we see from a very young age that they're completely off because they want to spend time with their friends instead of doing homework. I mean, a child who wants to spend time with their friends instead of doing homework, you can see they're messed up from the core. There are obviously some Gilgal or some Rasha from the previous generation who just didn't get it. And what do? It's not good because these friends are pulling him away. So what do we do with these friends? We have to separate the friendship. So, okay, but how do you separate the friendship? Well, you call up the mother of the other friends and say, you realize that if your son is a friend of this boy, they might go off the derech together, and he needs to do his homework, he's having a bad influence, and you make a whole matzav, and b'li ayin hara, you manage to split up these friends. Now, any kid who wants to play with his friends instead of doing homework means that love is more important to him than significance. Because homework might give him significance if the teacher knows how to make you feel significant for doing your work. But it won't give him love necessarily. Playing with his friends is just connection. This kid needs connection more than he needs significance. So you're going to take away his friends. Have you shown him consequences? If it's a kid who needs significance, love is not the end of the world, and he's just can't be bothered doing his homework, then you can, in a subtle way, tell the friends, maybe don't play with each other for the first 2 hours after school, do your homework. But if this kid needs his friends, that's his lifeline, it's his oxygen, and you take that away from him, you have not punished him, you have traumatized him. There's a story which some of you might have heard from me if you heard last year's talk in Torah. But there was this rabbi who came to the hospital, and part of his job of every rabbi is hatch, match, and dispatch. When a child is born, you need the rabbi. When he gets married, you need the rabbi. When he dies, you need the rabbi. So this person was dying, he's very, very old, and the rabbi came to help him, I don't know. I don't deal with that. So he came there, and this person was lying there very weak, and you could see it was like he was having a hard time. And the rabbi came and spoke to him, gave him chizuk, and this person asked for a piece of paper. He wanted to write something down. The rabbi thought, this is mamash, he's writing his last tzavor now, and he's got some tremendous message to give the world, and I'm the shliach. These are the moments. Just before a person passes away, he's giving away his final message. Takes pen, paper, the person writes it down, he folds it up, puts it in his pocket, and 20 minutes later, the computers go kav yashar, and he transcends to better worlds. Okay, fine, so they do what they do, comes to the big levaya, and obviously the rabbi has to give a drasha. In the middle of his drasha, he remembers he's got this piece of paper, now this is going to make a hesped chaval al hazman. He pulls out the paper, Rabbi, you're standing on my oxygen pipe. Now, I don't know if this is a true story or not a true story, but it's happening in our classrooms every single day. It's like we're so into doing the right thing and being the rabbi there and saying the right things and giving chizuk and all the other important things, but are we standing on the oxygen pipe of the student? What are we trying to have? Has the doctor, you all know this, operation successful, I'm sorry the patient died. What's our mission statement? What's our goal? Is our goal to have nurtured, healthy kids? Are we going about it in the right way? The Gemara says in Eruvin that there was a Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan, who was one of the big Tanoim, who he had all of 12 students. He spent 18 days, and the Gemara says he didn't teach them anything. All he did was learn. No, it's okay. He said, thank you. All he did for 18 days, that's more days than students, he didn't open any books, no textbooks, nothing. He did was to get to know the students. Rabbi Yochanan, in Eruvin Daf Nun Gimel. What did he want to know? He wanted to know exactly in which way this heart of this child was different to this one, and the chokhmah, the intellect, the cognitive faculties of this Talmud was unique and different to this one. So you have 13 kids in the class, and they're all somewhere nowadays, especially as then you're not the first teacher they're meeting. Who knows what's happened till now? Who knows what's happened at home? Who knows what the kids have been through? I won't tell you the statistics of kids that are hurt, nothing to do with the school system. I don't want to frighten anyone. But many, many of these kids are coming into the system extremely fragile. So are we being there, doing our job as teachers, not just teaching the kids, but nurturing them? Are we giving them the love and the respect that they're lacking, are we building that up? Are we replacing what's been stolen from them? And chas v'sholom, if we're not doing that, are we possibly taking them even closer to the breaking line? It's a very important point that we have to know in today's generation, whether we like it or not. The world today is being driven by love. The Goisha concept of love doesn't make a difference what. It's all out there. Wherever you go, however much you try and protect yourselves and the children, it's all about connection and love and everything that goes with it. The only way to fight love is with love. There's nothing else. Right? And there's an understanding to it, even according to the Sorim. Before Mashiach comes, everything's going to get connected. It's all about connection. The only choices we have is what's he or she connecting to, what he's connecting to, or who he or she is connecting to. If this child gets discipline in school and gets information in school but doesn't feel connected in school, this kid will find a connection elsewhere. The connection can be fake friends on social media. It can be real friends in a dangerous world. Dangerous friends. These kids don't have that much to live for, so they're happy to take the risks. What do they care? Is there somebody who will make them drunk or poison them? Okay. There was a boy that I was dealing with, and I found him one night, actually, I should say, 3 o'clock in the morning, sleeping on the couch in my garden. So I called him in and said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Nobody sleeps in my garden. If you need a bed, come into the house." Gave him a room, bought him clothes, looked after him, and asked him, "What's the story?" So he says to me, "There's curfew at home. 11 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock at night, the doors get locked." They didn't throw me out. They just told me that 11 o'clock, if I'm not in, the door's locked. It's just consequences, like not throwing you out. Now this kid was a love and connection kid. He needed his friends. And having his friends and nightlife with his friends till 3 in the morning was much more important than following the rules of being at home on time. I called the mother and I told the mother that statistically he's going to be in one of 3 places: the grave, a psych ward, or jail, because we don't really have a third option for kids who are thrown out of the house. I said we didn't throw him out, and she says, "I know you're right, it's dangerous, but my husband's a ban Torah and he's got guidance." I don't argue with people who get guidance. So he came, he stayed there, he stayed with us for 3 months, and 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after that he left, he went to Yerushalayim. 2 weeks later they were going swimming in the Kinneret, and they couldn't really swim, but knowing how to swim is just a minor detail if you don't really care, whether you can or can't swim. So all his friends jumped in. He says, "Listen, I'm jumping in, I don't know how to swim. So if it's deep and you see anything happening, then you'll just pull me out." And that's where he stayed. We don't have the privilege of having rules. This kid needed his friends. There's an important nukuda, which is just a good piece of advice. There are a tremendous amount of factors that contribute to the child's health or illness on the spectrum of how emotionally healthy or stable he is. There's home, there's society, there's his friends, there's school. Teachers have to realize you're not just a teacher and that's it. The day ends when it ends, and Shalom Al Yisrael. This child is someplace before he comes to you, and he's someplace when he leaves you. And even though he's spending more hours with you in school than any other single place, but there are other factors in his life. You get these people, unfortunately, there are therapists like that, who say, "We deal with the kids, we don't deal with the parents." which is ridiculous. Every time he comes home, he gets traumatized, and the therapist has to deal with it. So I tell the therapist, call up the parents and tell them, if you do this, you do that, then he might survive. And he says, well, there's the legal things, what's it called, confidentiality, and which is, by the way, a very good reason. Dina de Malchus Adin, you do have to follow the laws and that. So if he dies, but you do have to follow, the rules of confidentiality and that. But I say, even if you don't break the laws of whatever these laws are, there's enough you can tell parents to do right without disclosing to them what the child has told you. If this child tells you, every time I come home, my mother says this and this to me, or my father says this and this, then you don't need to say your child, just tell him, when your child comes home, greet him with a smile, make sure there's some cake on the table, even if it's 4 o'clock in the morning. There's enough you can do with a parent that can actually help the child. You want to be that therapist that every Sunday has to help the child survive the Shabbos trauma? Just teach the parents what Shabbos is doing to their child, and you'll be able to progress. You'll have a healthy adult at the end of it. And teachers, it's the same thing. You're seeing something strange in the class, chutzpah or anything else. Let's say there's a real problem. It's not a fabricated one. Are you sharing that with the parents? It's wrong, and you're not the people who are dealing with, who should be taking these decisions, I imagine. I don't know any of you, but you're not the ones taking this decision when and who to throw out and how of a school. But in most cases where a kid gets thrown out, it's not necessary. There are tools to deal with the kids that they don't have to get thrown out. But if you have a challenging child, are you sharing it with the parents? You're not allowed to throw the kid out, but you can force the parents to go and get guidance. I tell that sometimes to Manala and Manala. He says, no, are you allowed to throw him out? No. But you can tell the parents, if you don't go for help, for guidance, or if you don't send the child for guidance, depending if the Talmidah or the Talmud is ready and ripe enough to get guidance, then we're not having your kid back. Tell the parents, we don't want to throw out your child, but we cannot work on our own, because you are part of this child's life. You're going to take him to the point 98, and I'm going to be a teacher and take him from 98 to 100, and I'm going to throw him off the derech when you took him to 98. You're the parents. So that doesn't mean that's always the case, but be responsible, involve the parents in what you're doing. There's very often mentors. They have older sister, or whatever you call it, the perach, or in every place calls it what they call it, but there's other people influencing this child. Involve them in what you're doing. The therapist, the friend, the big sister, the parents, the school. If we all work together, we'll notice what the strong points are, what works. And today somebody came to me and said, in class, my child's a terror. When he learns outside the classroom, he's an angel. He sits for 2 hours and knows everything. So I'm not blaming the teacher, but there's clearly something about the way this child is functioning that you don't know. You deserve to know. You're not going to take the care to find out. You're just going to carry on doing what you've always done, and you might end up breaking this child. There's one last need that's kedai to know about. We spoke about those that everybody needs everything, but we spoke about those that need love. Everybody needs love, but some are screaming for it more than others. They all need significance, certainty. You do get those that need thrill, variety. Like commitment is just the worst thing for them. The love people have a fear of rejection. The significant people have a fear of failure. The certainty people have a fear of loss of control, and the people who need the certainty who need the variety, they have a fear of commitment. We once had a story, which I don't know if these things happen in the girls' schools, but I'll tell you what happened anyway, where there was this kid who went to the bathroom and everyone gets their own cubicle, right? Because we're civilized human beings. And this kid stood up on some stool or something to look over what was going on next door. So obviously that's a scandal, and he's definitely hurting most of the kids in the class. And we have to really take this to heart and make a big asik out of it, and destroy as many people and families as we can, just to make sure that chas v'shalom this doesn't happen again. So they came forward and said, what are we going to do? We have to throw him out. The question is, we have to throw all his friends out, because who knows what they're doing. So we said to them, maybe send him horse riding. It sounds like it just needs a bit of a thrill, and the classroom is very, very boring, and then homework, and then going to bed, and then getting up, and it's so boring. Maybe just send him horse riding, give him a thrill, once a week, and that will be the end of it. And that's what they did, and this kid is just safe sailing, everything is okay. Be aware there are some kids that they just need that action. If you see a kid like that, and it's not necessarily your ADHD kids, even though it might be, give them something to do. He's ADHD, yes, and he's getting his punishment, he's getting his medication, he's being made into this robot, because it's so important to be able to get 100 in your report card, and he's sitting there really feeling, I wish I could jump up, but I can't because of some chemical in my brain, and he just needs something a bit more. And give him something to do. Let him go to the office and bring the papers. Let him give the books out. Be original. Try and just find those ideas to give this child something to do. The commitment, the boring, just day-to-day routine is torture for him. Just send him out the classroom. Find a good reason to send him out. Chazal say there are 4 Yisodas, the 4 basic Yisodas, I don't know how to say it in English, the basic traits on which the whole world is, and these are the 4 we just discussed now. Well, none of us are doctors. You're not supposed to be doctors. You're not supposed to be diagnosticians, but you are supposed to be aware. If you see a question, if something doesn't sit right, don't just break the kid into place, because you'll have a broken kid. When we were growing up, we did not know we could choose to go off the derech, or we could choose to be chutzpahdik, or we could choose to have ADHD. All those things, they deprived us of that knowledge. So we just did what we did and just did what we did. But nowadays they know that they can choose all these things. If something is going wrong, pick up the phone to a superior, to somebody who's been in teaching longer, to a menahelet if she's more educated, or whoever it is, to a therapist, to a rabbi, anyone you feel appropriate, and say, I have this child in my class, and this is what I'm seeing. What do I do? What could it mean? What could it mean about what's happening at home? And then you might be a young teacher, and you might not have the authority or the ability to deal with what's going on at home. But there's always somebody you can turn to the Rav of the shul. There's always something to do. Because if you don't do it, you're taking a tiny part of the child's life, and you're trying to impose on him a success that he cannot do, and ultimately he's going to get thrown out and get broken, and he's going to blame a finger at us, and we don't know what we did wrong. So maybe we did nothing wrong, but what's our duty? Our call of duty is to be aware we're in a fragile world. Most kids are fragile. Most of them are healthy, but fragile. Most of them are closer to health than to breaking. But there's too many who are close enough to the breaking point. We have to identify it. Number 1, not take him 1 point closer to the breaking point, and number 2, to fill that lack that he's had till now and bring him closer to the health point. And then UMesorah will be the end of all the tragedies we're seeing, end of all the off the derech kids, and we'll have a very healthy, stable society.